Excuse me. So first I want to talk kind of high level, what is MFA? Like, and then kind of talk a little bit about the problem that we're hoping to solve with MFA, and then wrap up with some of that solving, right? Like what are some options for MFA? Where are we seeing it implemented currently in society? And then the very tail end, like I said, show some examples of it, and then some things to look out for, because while it is super duper awesome and really can fix the problem with authentication, it's not quite perfect. So I will jump right in. What is MFA, right? So it's a way to really kind of verify to provide better authentication that you are who you say you are. So right now, most places we use a username and password, which falls kind of in this something category. So that's one factor. In this case, MFA is why we call it MFA, or multi-factor. It's three factors that are kind of traditionally considered in MFA, and that's something you know, something you have, and something you are. Some places they may call it 2FA, or two-factor authentication, two-step authentication. It all kind of falls into that same realm. Lately, I've seen some people kind of toss out a fourth factor, being location. Traditionally, these are the three. I'll leave the fourth one up for internet folks to decide whether that's official or not. So in this case, so I'll kind of dive in here, kind of a little bit which each ones are. So starting with something what are some examples there? Pins or passwords. So this could be, anything from your standard password, username and password combination, or in the case of like a pin, it could be used one of the pieces of a two-factor. There's actually a good example that a lot of people I don't realize think about as MFA that I'll get to in a minute. Push to numbers is another example, and so that's something, again, I'll kind of show a better example of later on, kind of what that technology piece is. And then knowledge checks, right? We've all seen the websites where you log in and then it says, have you ever worked at, which of these 4 locations have you worked at, or, which one of these 4 street addresses on Yellow Brick Road, did you live at? So those are all examples of things you might be able to use as one of those factors. Something you have. So it could be a specific device. We see this a lot in the enterprise where, a certificate is put on your laptop specifically. So you logging in from your laptop makes that two-factor piece. It's something you know and something you have. Another good example is tokens or cards. So it could be, key fobs. There we go, something like that. Has little numbers that rotate on it. I got another one here, some YubiKeys. Let me try and get it closer there. Things like that, that are physical devices that you have to use. Or again, kind of the digital version of that. A lot of these have stepped away from, using this key fob with the little numbers generated on it to an application on your laptop or computer that does kind of that same idea. So then the third major one is something you are. So this one's fun, biometrics. So the big ones, facial recognition, fingerprint. I hesitate to put eye scanning, iris or retinal scanning in there in the major ones, but kind of in there, those are your big 3. There's some kind of cool ones out there, and just nerding out on this for a little bit. Out there, there's the test I took a number of years back, and as you came in and out of the testing area, you had to scan your palm at the door, and it did vascular scanning. So it did a light that read through, and it, made sure that all the veins and everything that branched up in your hand were you. So, it wasn't like I checked out and sent my double in that was actually really smart at it and to pass the test for me, kind of thing. One of them I've read about, I've never seen, but I think is a great idea is typing gate. So much like, we walk differently, we all type differently. And so that can be measured. So all examples of things you are there. So kind of as a segue to the problem that MFA solves, right? Like, why do we use MFA? So Scott Adams, the writer of Dilbert, put this out in 2005, and it's one of my favorite kind of security related comics, because this is one that everybody can relate to. They don't have to be a tech person. In fact, more often than not, it's more tech people that are non-tech people that relate to this because of the problem. And so it's funny too, in that it shows that the problem that MFA is here to fix is not a new problem. It's been around for a very, very long time. And so you can see this was done in 2005. To put some time context to this, if you're like me and still think like, oh, 10 years ago was the 90s, this comic is almost old enough to vote. So just kind of give you an idea of how long it's been around and kind of where that problem starts with. So to the next slide, we'll talk about, really kind of dive into these issues here. Why we should use MFA, right? Like what's the problem we're trying to fix? Well, the first part of the problem is that computing power is ridiculously cheap and passwords are dumb. I'll just come out and say it. So we've kind of seen an evolution of this really bad self-sustaining loop, and it starts with password complexity. So long time ago, 6-character passwords, didn't even have to have capital letters, like just 6 lowercase letters, you were set. The only people that had the power to break that kind of stuff were nation states, and life was grand. Well, now the problem is like I said, computing power has become ridiculously cheap. There are applications out there that are designed to specifically take, using additional logic to add to it, to kind of streamline password cracking processes. And so I'm going to bounce forward a slide and come back just to, I found a fun graphic earlier to kind of really, drive this point home. So this was from Hive, some Hive systems, some research they did to show in 2022. And this is, of course, mileage may vary, but this is general idea of how long your password will last given certain statistics, right? So say our original 6-character password is pretty much, don't even bother with it. To give one more little jump in here to give an idea to kind of, I'll say the craziness, the scale of this. So a 6-character password with just lowercase is 308 million possible combinations. By just switching up to just uppercase, you go from 308 million to 20 billion. That's capital B. Making it alphanumeric bumps it to 57 billion, and alphanumeric and special bumps it all the way up to 164 billion, capital B. So just to point that out, that's this one right here that is basically worthless. So like I said, so this has kind of been, a password arms race over the years, right? So we say, cool, well, you need, a security people, we'll tell everybody you need 6 characters. I'll make it upper and lowercase. Well, man, computing has come along. Okay, let's make it alphanumeric, right? Upper, lower, and numbers, and then specials. Well, let's, go from 6 characters to 7 characters. Actually, let's go crazy. Let's go to 8 characters. But then it's still, like I said, it's this arms race. If computing powers goes down, methods get better for cracking passwords, And now all of a sudden you have a 12-character password that's, still, depending on if it's very low complexity, is still very easy to crack. So taking this back, you tell me, John, tracking what you're saying, I've been listening to my security people in these letters they send out. I totally don't just delete them when I see them. And they told me that passwords are dumb and I should be using passphrases because that makes complexity easy, right? Instead of trying to figure out 12, 14 characters that I'm never going to remember, I can look at my desk and be like, oh, well, I have my headset and my phone and my keyboard. Well, that's like headset, phone, keyboard. I don't know. That's like 15 characters there. And then I make a couple upper or lowercase, throw in some special characters, some numbers. I mean, that's a virtually uncrackable password. 100% agree. Very awesome. But that leads into the next cycle, the next loop part of this self-sustaining cycle is as complexity became, well, higher, we switched from passwords to passphrases, or that's kind of what we really started promoting. So cool, now everybody has, they come up with this, like I have this super awesome, uncrackable password, I am set. Well, sort of, you're set for that one login. The only problem now is how many passwords does a person, like a regular person, have, right? And it's something that honestly, before doing this presentation, I never thought about. So I was doing some research for it, and NordVPN did a study they released last year, beginning of this year. It was a study last year. And according to them, the average active person on the internet has 100 passwords. 100 passwords. And I thought, that seems crazy. Like, I mean, I know they said active people, so you're going to have your less active people. But 100? Like, that's ridiculous. So then I got to thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, admittedly, I am not, outside of work hours, a hugely active internet person, right? Largely by design. But so I got to think about it. How many passwords do I have? Just kind of off the top of my head. It's like, well, personal email, bank, doctor, power, water, recycle, throw in one or two more that I'm sure I'm forgetting. And now that I have had a chance to think about it for a second, like, oh, well, that's only 8. I mean, 8 complex passwords, even passphrases. Yeah, okay. I mean, I can do it, right? Like, I'll use password manager. I'll write them down in a Word document and super encrypt it with a nice complex password. I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. Oh, well, that's only personal stuff, though. What about work? Okay, so start at 8. So now my work email, those other 4 applications at work that aren't single sign-on yet. Well, this number is quickly growing, right? This is not a feasible scaling process here. And so the problem we run into then is you say, well, if my password is uncrackable in theory, right? Just kind of I'll throw one out there to kind of back that up. Average numbers, and this will vary depending on password leak. Most of the time in the last couple of years, about 60% of the passwords in a password, when a password file is leaked, about 60% of the password or credential sets are broken in the first day. By day 2, it jumps up to about 80%, and by day 10, it's at about 90%. And generally speaking, most places that are going to do that stop kind of in that 2 to 10 day range, because even if you have, say, 20 million credentials in a breach, which unfortunately by today's standards is a very small breach, if by day 10 I have 90%, that still means I have 18 million credentials to play around with. So You're saying, well, John, I have this super complex password. I listen to my people. I'm in that 10%. Okay. So if that's the case, I'm just going to use my one super complex password and only have to remember it, and I can just reuse it everywhere because it can't be cracked, right? Like we're gonna jump down here and we're gonna make one of these 18 character, fully blown, it's gonna take 438 trillion years to crack kind of passwords. Cool. Problem is exactly what we're seeing is now once people started making more complex passwords, password and data breaches have become prioritized because yeah, some places are very competent. They follow all the regulations. They're very security minded. They say my people's data is important to me. I'm going to do all the things and make sure their passwords are super secure. They're salted, they're encrypted, they're all the magic words. But then those other places aren't, right? Like there's a lot of places that store their passwords in plain text. In 2022, I promise you it happens. You can Google it. I know it's on the internet, right? So now what happens is I take my one super duper awesome password and I've used it at 10 sites. Well, 2 of those sites get breached, right? First one that gets breached, they were super awesome. They really cared about my data and my information. They encrypted everything. Cool. Even the NSA is just like, nope, not going to bother with it. The second site, they were really more just kind of looking to get it done quickly. So they didn't encrypt everything, or they only encrypted bits and pieces of it. You know, maybe the passwords weren't, but the data itself was. Okay, well, so they didn't expose my personal data, which I'll take that win. But now my password's been exposed. And now that it's been exposed, it's compromised at all 10 sites that I'm using it, right? Because I'm using those same email and password pair at 10 different locations. So as we drove password complexity up, password reuse also went up. Atlas VPN did a report, excuse me, I'll do this one first. SpyCloud is a security firm, and in their report earlier this year, in the 1.7 billion username combinations that they gathered from leaked sources last year, nearly 64% of the people used the same password across multiple sites. So in nearly 2 billion password combinations, 64% of them were identical, they found. Well, I mean, not to say 2 billion isn't a small subset. Atlas VPN, in their security report at the beginning of the year, reported that because 2021 was already such a stellar year, nearly 6 billion unique credential sets were leaked in 2021. And, you know, a not less than half or half-ish, we'll say, maybe, people are reusing those passwords. So now this is kind of starts escalating, right? As the years go, passwords get more complex. People start reusing passwords more. We start having data breaches. It's, you know, kind of really starts. So people say, okay, we drove people to complex passwords. Good thinking, didn't have the intended consequence. How do we fix that? So they say, got it. We need something that we can implement everywhere and that is cheap and effective and is 100% accessible. We can do knowledge checks. All right, I can dig that. I can take my super complex password for that way, whether it's been compromised or not, and I can log in and they can say, you know, John, appreciate your login and password over here, but we just want to make sure it's you. So we're going to ask you some questions. And this is all stuff that's been gathered over the years from, you know, your credit agencies and all places all over online. And so, you get, like I said earlier, you get those questions of, which of these places have you worked? In the last 10 years, have you lived at any of these addresses? Things like that. So it's like, okay, well, that's interesting approach. It's very accessible. It's, the data's out there, not bad. But then it becomes, now it's not just password breaches that are escalating. Now data breaches start escalating because we're asking people for this sensitive information. So in 2015, OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, was breached and lost 26 across 2 separate breaches, but most of it was in one breach. Lost almost 26 million background investigation records. So these were records that were used to do background investigations for people looking to get clearances and things like that. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, that's pretty awful for those people. A number to kind of keep in mind here, 2 numbers. In 2020, the population of the US was 330 million, and the global population was 7.75 billion. So when I'm throwing some of these numbers out here, just kind of roll that around, because some of these numbers get a little shocking. So fast forward 2 years, 2017, Equifax doesn't update some stuff for a while, and the personal information of 147 million Americans, mostly, is exposed to nefarious persons. Going back to the population number, that's roughly 45% of the US. So roughly 1 in 2 people in this room had their information exposed. I mean, just flat numbers. And then jump forward another 2 years, 2019, verifications.io came along. So verifications.io was a email verification service. So somebody, marketers could say, hey, I have this list. I want to talk to these people. Can you verify that these are valid email addresses? This is valid data, names, whatever associated with it. So in a spectacular hold my beverage and watch this moment, they left one of their databases exposed on the internet. And 763 million email addresses and their associated information were exposed. So roughly 1 in 10 of the global population. So yeah, email addresses exposed, not ideal. But the other part of that is the additional information: date of births, employers, genders, job titles, physical addresses, phone numbers, all included in those. So at this point, it's pretty likely that 1 in 10 people on Earth have had the information that they would need in a knowledge check exposed. So that's the bad news, right? We're over that. We can switch over to unicorns and rainbows. So that's the problem that MFA fixes, or mostly fixes at least. So in 2017, Google made this crazy step forward, and they said, we're going to require all 85,000 plus at the time employees to use MFA tokens for everything. So little tokens similar to this one, the YubiKey, but they made their own. And so basically when they went to log into a computer, they plugged it in, put in their PIN, and they were off to the races. Killed the password, killed the login, whole 9 yards. And it was announced that they were doing this, and there was a lot of the industry, even the security industry, it's like, y'all are crazy. I mean, good on you, but that's a big step. Just, I mean, because it kind of came out of nowhere. A year later, not a single employee account had been compromised in a phishing attack. A couple of years ago, 2020 at RSACon, Microsoft engineers were talking about compromised accounts and MFA. And they said that in their day-to-day dealings with security breaches and whatnot, 99.9% of compromised accounts don't use MFA. And so, you start seeing this picture of like, oh, well, I mean, like, this is the silver bullet, right? Like, this is the password panacea. Like, this solves all my issues. And it largely does. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. But one of the other things that I think is really important with MFA is when implemented properly, it's very convenient, which as a security person, it is super weird for me to be endorsing anything convenient just because generally security is not convenient. Like, I will wholly admit it, it's a thing. But when done well, it is very convenient. And that convenience makes it more usable and more likely for people to use. So we jump ahead past that slide. So MFA has been out for a while. We've talked, like I said, we've going back and forth, here and there. But it hasn't really been mainstream for the most part until, I'll say, the last few years or so. But I think there's the one, and I talked about it briefly earlier. I think a lot of people don't think about it as, oh, I do MFA a couple times a month probably. And that is, a great example of it is ATMs. You have your debit card, you have your PIN, something you have, something you know, right? So it's one of those that, if it kind of it breaks people into, you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't such a bad thing. Like, I do this is well-established technology. And so as it's kind of gotten easier to use, as it's gotten implemented better, it's definitely seen growth. The really commonplace that you see it nowadays is, banking, medical, any place with sensitive information. They have all really started to embrace MFA, especially with, like I said, 6 billion credentials leaked last year. This kind of gets to that. Some funny places where it's actually been around for quite a while, that you might not expect it, in video games. So some games have been doing this for public school math here, 15 years, something like that. So Blizzard, the creators of World of Warcraft, first started introducing authenticator fobs for World of Warcraft in 2008. And so again, that's one of those that looks like this, has a little button on it, you push, has the numbers. Because passwords were, accounts were getting stolen and resold and this and that, it was becoming such a problem. They're like, hey, pay $5, $10, whatever it was, get our fob, attach it to your account. Some games have even gone as far as rewarding the player with in-game items. One of the Star Wars games I was reading the other day, if you have an authenticator attached to your account, it gives you like 100 credits every month or something like that. I mean, it's a pittance, but it's one of those. I mean, it's definitely a psychological thing. You'll see it a lot across the web. Anytime you see sign in with, sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook, and I'll kind of hit that on a slide coming up here too, is, if you have MFA on your account set up, anytime you do those, like, that's kind of that beauty of it. It just streamlines this process. Windows Hello is another good example of it. I know we've talked about it here at the state level in some situations where you have, again, talk about convenience. I just look at my computer and it unlocks and logs me in. It doesn't get much more convenient than that. Same with, facial rec on your phone, supporting that if you go that route, whether it be I should say biometrics, right? So I look at my phone, Face ID says, yep, that's John. Put my thumbprint on the fingerprint on the finger reader. Again, logs me right in. I don't have to sit there and try and remember whatever PIN or passcode or pattern or this or that. I just look at it and it's good. Another spot you're starting to see it more is home door locks. It's oddly enough they're starting to see a lot more come out. So yeah, you walk up, you don't have to have your keys, no more fumbling around. You just hold your 5 bags of groceries, reach down, read your thumbprint, you're in your house. So these are kind of some of the places where we're seeing it now. We've been seeing it some kind of throw out some opportunities there of places just to get your mind rolling of how you might want to, where you can enable it in your life. So the next one, talk about what some options are out there. So I titled this slide "Least Good to Most Goodest." It's not just because I have a small town public school English education, I promise. It was done very intentionally. It's something that I've found over the years is, sometimes the silly things out of presentations are the most memorable piece. So if there's one thing out of all this presentation that you take away, is please take this slide away. In the past, especially in security presentations, a lot of the times you'll hear people say like, oh, well, you should never, ever use SMS or email one-time codes, like they're bad and they're just super awful. And then they follow it up with, well, but I mean, if you don't have anything else, then by all means, go ahead and use it. So, but you're already primed, right? You're already like, oh, well, you just said these are awful. Why do I want to do this? This makes no sense. So I'm hoping to kind of prime you in a better direction here. So starting from left to right, I will work through there because there is a hierarchy, right? Like not all MFA is equal. So kind of on the bottom end, you have things like SMS or email one-time codes. These are probably the most prevalent out there, right? You go to log into Office from outside of the SGN, you type in your work credentials, it sends you a text with a code to put in, something like that, right? So text, email thing, something like that. These are the most common. If you don't have any MFA and you can implement this, please implement this. Like bare minimum, do that one over on the left. The only reason that from the security community, it gets a lot of shade is, it's seen as, email is easy to compromise, text messages are easy to compromise. So, if somebody is watching one of those, then they get your phone, then they get the code, et cetera. So the next step up, Authenticator apps, these are becoming more and more common. They're a little more secure, right? Because now you're not sending this to some random inbox, essentially. Now it's on your phone. So now I go to, and I have a picture of this on the next slide. I go to a website, type in my username and password, I put in, and then it comes up, says, hey, what's your one-time password? I open up my phone, say, okay, go through my authenticator list, say, okay, I'm trying to log into the state, office. Here's my 6-digit code, and it recycles every 30 to 60 seconds. So you will, it'll constantly be changing. So that's good. Like I said, next step up, great option there. The only downside to these is these were the first ones that really started getting targeted once they started becoming popular. And so in phishing attacks, what you'll see now is this type of thing, or any one-time code really being targeted, where the phishing page will come up, it'll have username, password, and then either on the same page or it'll prompt you on the next page, what is your one-time password? So you type that in, and these attacks are set up so that like they happen instantly, right? So as soon as you hit it, either there's a person sitting there, or more likely it's automated. It goes, takes it, goes and logs in, sets up some sort of persistence. But again, don't want to say don't do it. 100% go do either of those two. They are, I use the Authenticator app for 90% of my stuff out there, honestly. So the third step, kind of that silver bar there, is push notifications. These are becoming a lot more popular, partly from the security side, and again, partly just from the ease of use side. So I can see, Google's used these for a while. Microsoft has used them. A lot of like major MFA players are. And so what this is I go to log in, I hit my login button, and it pops up on my device, whatever device I have registered. So say I'm logging into a Gmail account and I have my phone registered, it pops up a little box and it's like, hey, you're trying to, we see you're trying to log in from this region. Is that, is that you? And you hit yes or no. So if you hit no, it would kill that login right away. If I hit yes, it would let me in. One that Google's been doing for a couple of years, I don't know if Apple does it or not, and Microsoft just started pushing it out last month. It's kind of a hybrid between push notifications and like a one-time code. And so what it'll do is like I said, you log in, it says, hey, is this you logging in? You say, yep, sure is me. And then it has a number on the screen, where you're trying to log in. And it says your number is, I'll use the one in my example here. Your number is 83. And then on my device, where I've now said, yes, it's me, then it pops up and says, on the Google variant, it'll say, it'll have some other form, whether it be pattern or fingerprint or something. And once you've satisfied that, it says, which one of the numbers do you see on the screen? And it'll list like 3 different numbers there. So in this case, I would pick 83. On the Microsoft Authenticator, it's a little different. It's the same basic principle though, in that on the login screen, I've logged in and it says, cool, your number is 83. Now I go over to my Authenticator and it says, are you trying to log in? And I can either say, no, it's not me. And it's like abort, pull shoot, I'm out of here. Or I can put the number in and hit yes. Now, the nice thing here is the only person that knows what that number is the person that is trying to log in. So now if all of a sudden I'm getting, some sort of notification on my phone saying, hey, are you trying to log in? If it's just a push notification, I might look at it and go, I don't think I am, but I don't know. I have like 12 tabs going and, probably one of them's trying to do it. So I'll just hit yes. Versus with this, now I have to go find the page that's trying to log in. And if there isn't one, then I very definitely know that I am not trying to log in. And this is some sort of malicious attack. But again, the nice thing here, I put in my username, hit login. It just takes me right through the process. I don't have to remember 20, 30, 100 different complex passwords. It's tied to me and my device. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So then the fourth level, and I'll go back here, is Fido Authentication. So Fido stands for Fast Identity Online, and it's kind of a framework on the back end on websites and things like that. And sometimes it uses biometrics, sometimes it uses physical keys like the YubiKey. But basically it's that same idea. And these are where you see what they call phish resistant MFA. And I know I'm running out of time. Andrew's probably over there doing this in whatever room he's in. Sorry, Andrew. But so Fido authentication, like I said, is what they lean to, and they've started calling phish resistant. So your one-time codes can get phished. The nice thing with Fido, the way it works is it's all done on your machine, nothing stored anywhere outside of your machine, and it requires something to be at your machine, right? Something you have. And so 2 things there. before I get to the last slide. In an example of how phish resistant versus non-phish resistant, kind of how they play out. Cloudflare, they're one of the world's largest organizations related to anything internet, really, recently suffered an attack. And in that, they had 76 employees that were emailed this phishing message. And, they open it up. Most of them reported it. 3 of them input their credentials, input their one-time pass. Instantly, like I said, on the back end, it's all automated now in these attacks. The attacker grabbed all that, went and logged into the system using their current one-time pass because it's time sensitive, and then attempted to download and do a bunch of administrative stuff. Well, Cloudflare, in their infinite wisdom, used defense in depth, which is a security, big security thing. And basically the idea is, you don't want like an egg, you don't want a really hard shell in GUI center. You want multiple layers that somebody has to go through to kind of make it as tough as possible. And so in this case, what Cloudflare did is on their initial login, they allowed one-time pass authentication. But then on their really sensitive stuff, where their admin tools and things like that, they required phish resistant MFA. And so 3 of their employees actually put their credentials in, put their one-time pass in, but because they required the additional token, the attack just kind of fizzled out. They weren't able to go anywhere. And kind of so before getting, like I said, getting my last slide, the last one here. An interesting tidbit from a Microsoft blog earlier this year, only 22% of enterprise customers that could enable MFA have enabled MFA. And it's understandable. I mean, especially at an enterprise level, I've been kind of trying to skirt the line on this and give information that we can use at home and at work. So there's a lot to it for certain. I know we've reached out to, and I just drew Matt Stevens and his team. We've been working with them to do some testing on different, the YubiKeys or some of these other bits. Because it really does have this impact at a really huge scale. One I failed to mention earlier for my DoD folks out there, your CAT cards. That's MFA. So you have your card, you put it in, it's got certificates on it, you put your PIN in, somebody could have your card or know your PIN, and apart, they're worthless, right? So that's the other piece that MFA is trying to bridge, is that, in theory, I could give you my token, right? Like I could take this and say, here you go, Andrew, have fun, knock yourself out, buddy. But without the other piece, individually, they're worthless. And so that's one of those things. So the only thing, like I said, it's not like I said earlier, it's just, it's almost that password panacea. It's just not quite flawless. There's a couple downsides to it. And that's 2 of those downsides are what we're starting to see more and more. I will jump to your question here in just a second, Kevin. So the 2 attacks we're seeing more and more that have really started to ramp up kind of rely on one of 2 things. So one of them is called notification fatigue. And so this is with the push notifications, sometimes with SMS, but generally you see it associated with push notifications where somebody just keeps attempting to log in, right? So it's 2 in the morning, somebody's trying to log into my account and my phone's just blowing up. It's like, hey, is this you? Is this you? Is this you? Is this you? And I'm going to be like, no, it's not. It's 2 in the morning. I'm trying to sleep. It's not me. And I'm just going to keep hitting no. But it's 2 in the morning and I'm already tired. So what's the chance that I hit yes on accident? Or what's the chance that I just like, you know what? Maybe it is me. Maybe I left a tab open out on my computer and it's trying to do something. Sure, I'll hit yes just to make it go away. So if you run into that, contact your security people. Tell them like, hey, and it's if it's at work, your security people, If it's at a, outside in a personal space like your bank or something, call your bank. Say, hey, I'm getting notification spams and like I'm in Hawaii not doing anything with my bank. Like change my password, do something. The other one is impersonation calls. And this one, I couldn't find the link. It was a good article I read a couple years back. And he was actually a security reporter. And he was out at the bar having a good time with his friends, wrapping up a Friday. And he gets a text message, and it's a one-time pass, right? He gets text messages supposedly from his bank saying, this is, and this is the one-time pass for your login. Like, well, that's weird. Like, I'm at the bar. And 5 minutes later, he gets another one followed by a phone call saying, hey, how you doing today? This is Jim from the bank. We noticed some weird issues, and so we're doing some resets on our side. Could you give me the one-time pass that we just sent to your phone? Like, oh, well, yeah, that makes total sense. I can get behind that. Sure, Jim, here you go. And that's how his bank account got compromised. So those are the two. Like I said, it's not quite perfect, but as far as convenience and things like that go, it is light years ahead of just traditional credentials.